Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time zone it is, wherever you're in the world, it is your Lore Saviour, and I know the balls on that man to make such a ballsy TTRPG claim. The Mythic Games Master Emulator, 2nd edition, by Tana Pigeon, the greatest TTRPG book ever made, the greatest tool to bestow these tiny, delicate British hands! Yeah, I'll stand by that claim. It's advertised and marketed as a massive solo TTRPG tool. I mean, just look at the number of pages, the girth on this bluey violety tome. Its subtitle reads, "Create dynamic role-playing adventures without a games master." And I think this book is so much more than that. It is far more than just a massive compendium of tables and ideas that allows one to play TTRPGs by yourself. But I feel that with the right mindset, you could take a book like this into any game session, regardless whether you're playing fantasy, cyberpunk, horror, all sorts of things. It will make you a better games master. It will make you better improvising, and it will just encourage you to embrace chaos by the balls and give them a good old little squeeze. But those little analogies aside, let us talk about a bit more about Mythic, because I know I've touched upon Mythic a couple of times before on the channel, usually in correlation with other solo TTRPG endeavours, but I'm going to be assuming that anybody who's watching this video is unaware of Mythic, that they've never heard of it before, or its little history, or at least my observations on said history. Now, Mythic, once upon a moon, started out as a role-playing game simply called Mythic. There's a big old red book that was the most system-agnostic system that ever system-agnostic. Now, I've done a video talking about system-agnostic stuff before, which is going to be on a card up there somewhere, and the biggest beef that I have with these books is that they're not really system-agnostic 80% of the time. When something says that it is system agnostic, what it really means is that you can play with other fantasy games besides D&D, which I find is a little misleading and quite a little bit shitty. But Mythic, as a role-playing game, allows one to create whatever system or setting or world, period. There is no lore, there is no metaplot, there's no key figures. You create everything from the get-go, whether it could be magic or sci-fi or a mixture of the two. You're free to create whatever the fuck you want, and there was a character sheet that went with it that allowed one to generalise some stats, but the way that most of the decisions are made is by rolling on something known as the fate chart, which I'll talk about in a moment, which is a very genius idea, really. It encourages improvisation and role-playing and collaboration amongst the group, so nothing is really set in stone. That you can't really be bound by any rules, because, to be frank, there aren't any rules with a system like that. There's just tools and suggestions that you could be using. Now, at some point, Tana Pigeon would be looking at the reviews and what people were saying about Mythic, and realised that most people actually buy Mythic to play TTRPGs by themselves, because the rules and systems that we will be talking about and teasing for you allowed to accommodate solo play rather nicely. So Tana Pigeon, being the goated lass that she is, decided to repackage Mythic as a Games Master Emulator tool, which has a very similar sort of subtitle and heading to the one I just read to you. Create dynamic role-playing adventures without preparation, for use as a supplement for your favourite role-playing games. Now, I have the print-on-demand version Drive through RPG. I don't know if you can get this like in a nicer quality elsewhere, but not I think there's much point, because as you can see, this is a fucking tiny thing. This isn't like fucking kiddie annual size sort of thing. But it's alright, I much prefer having these things physical, because I can like flick through the pages and find what I need easier, rather than to rely on PDFs, which, remember, was kind of its infancy in like 2001-2 sort of things. But what does Mythic actually allow you to do? How does it work? Well, if we come over to this very screen here, you can see the fate chart, which is the whole meat and potatoes of the Mythic engine, as it were. Now, looks very confusing at first, but I promise you once we break it down, it's a lot easier to manage in bite-sized chunks. So, as a solo player, you have to assume the role as a player and the games master, because the games master is going to be planning all that usual shit for you, and you as a player will have to take on some of that burden, and sometimes you'll need to work out how likely something is going to occur. So let us use an example, right? Let us say that our character vampire, because, you know, just to stick with the channel's main theme here, is snooping around of a warehouse site at night because vampires in it, and I want to determine the likelihood of it being guarded to see if there are any other people that are guarding the premises, which will determine how easy it is to get inside, but also how we're going to get inside as well. And the way that we do this is by having a look at this chart of numbers here. Now, the fate chart for Mythic is a roll under system, so if you're familiar with some OSR games and the basic role-playing system, which is basically Chaosium's library of Call of Cthulhu, Pendragon, RuneQuest, etc. and so forth, you take a D100, which consists of 2 D10s. Sometimes the D10s comes up with the 10s rather than the units, such as my example here, but you can also get some nice balls that have got all the numbers on them. I recommend a good ball or two. Now, what you then do is then you roll a number, and if the number that you roll is underneath a particular value, that is going to be a yes. So that's going to be usually the thing that you expect, and if it's higher than that number, it's going to be a no. But you've seen now that if we have a look at these numbers, there's that big old number in the middle, you've got a number on the left, and a number on the right. Now, what does that mean? Well, these give us exceptional yeses and exceptional nos, which is basically a yes or no, but with some extra steps involved. Now, this pairs a little bit with the chaos rank, which, when you're playing through any TTRPG, you'll know that things will fluctuate in and out of control. Sometimes the game's master will just crank the knob of the pressure a little bit and just make you feel a bit on your seat a bit more. And sometimes you feel a bit more relaxed because you have a lot more control, because maybe a lot more powerful, or some really fortunate dice rolls, or combination of the two. And the chaos rank is meant to facilitate this into the game. So as you're playing, moving from scene to scene, these numbers here are going to go up and down like a motherfucker, right? So the way that it works with first edition of Mythic is that the more control that you are, the higher the number is going to be, but the less control that you are, the lower the number is going to be, because you can see if we look at up here again, it's down to 50, 35, 25, 15, 10, which sort of dictates how the likelihood of getting a yes response here. So let us say that our chaos rank is 5, our default starting place when we're playing Mythic. But this is the first scene of our first session. Our vampire's scooping about this warehouse. We're going to go and collect something, right? And I want to find out whether the place has got security of some description. So I think that is going to be very likely that this place is going to be guarded at night. So when we roll, which I will actually demonstrate for you to show that I'm not bullshitting this, we are going to be looking for answers between 85 and 16. Any number between those numbers, including 85, is going to be a yes. But between 85 and 97, that's going to mean a no. If it's higher than 97, that's an exceptional no. But if it's lower than 16, it's going to be an exceptional yes. So let's roll and see what happens. So I got 52. So that is between 16 and 85. So that means that the place is guarded. And I would say that there would probably be some security guards or bouncers, like goon henchmen sort of thing, like wandering around the facility, you know, doing little checks and whatnot. Or are there? Maybe there's just the one, and I can do another roll to find that out. And in fact, I'm going to do that right now. I actually think it would be a near sure thing, actual wording here, that there are going to be multiple security goon people about. So in this instance, using the same chaos ranking, we're going to come to near sure thing, and if our answer's between 90 and 18, it means that there's going to be a lot of people about. But if it's between 90 and 99, then it's going to be a no. And of course, if we get lower than 18 and 99, it's going to be an exceptional yes and an exceptional no, respectively. So let's see what happens here. Okay, so I rolled a 24, which is just above the 18, so that is still a yes. There are still lots of security guards wandering around. So I'll have to now try and come up with a way to get into this facility without getting seen. So it's allowing me to push the direction of the narrative that makes some logical sense. Now, what will happen if, let's say, that it was an exceptional yes to there were security around? Well, it could be the fact they've all got guns and they're like, there's something going on there on high alert. Why on their high alert? And we can work it out here. So you can see that's a really simple process just of building the scene out here. And with our little example, I can now have something to work towards to pad out the scene, give it some dressing, some characters to work with, and it's going to help me how to get in there without getting shot down. But there's another step that we need to consider as well. You see, when we're playing games, sometimes the games master will throw a fucking span in the works that may seem random to us. Obviously the game's master's planning that stuff, but there's a system in here that's going to dictate how that's going to work. And what that is that when you're rolling on the fate chart, if you roll a double number, but the unit of that number is lower than the chaos rank, then a random event may occur. So what do I mean by that? So let's just go back to our example where we have our guard patrolling around the facility, right? And I'm now trying to find of a particular weak point, and I work out, is there a weak point? And I roll 44, right? Which means it's a yes, but 44 is a double, 4 and 4, and 4 is lower than 5. It means that I'll then roll on a separate table found in this book to determine the nature of the random event. Is something going to happen to an NPC that I'm aware? Is a new NPC going to be introduced into the mix? Are we going to be pursuing towards a thread, which is like a little plot point that we had? So in this scenario, a thread would be finding out what's in the warehouse, or retrieving the stolen items, or whatever the particular scenario is. That could be a thread. It could be a separate thread, like we'll do with our backstory, like finding a lover, protecting a lover. They could be introduced into the mix. If we rolled on something like that, it could be the fact that our loved one's involved somehow. How? Are they an enemy? Foe? Captured? There's all sorts of different things that we can work with here. And sometimes you may end up rolling on altered scenes, which completely destroys the narrative entirely. Or something else a bit more miscellaneous. And there's all sorts of things that you could do here, but sometimes when you get thrown these random events, you've got no idea what would happen here, which is where we can come over to the event subject, or rather the event meaning tables, which is going to help you with those random scenes, but it's also going to help you determine some of those more ambiguous moments in your sessions with or without the at-random elements coming in. Now, for example, we could be in the warehouse that we're trying to infiltrate, and I want to try and find out the general scene about what's going on here. Now, I could ask a fate question about that, but I could also determine what's going to be happening here with the action and subject tables, coming up with a 2-word prompt that's going to help me work out what's potentially going on. So let's roll on the first one, the action table. And that is 26, which gives us the result of procrastinate, and 58, which gives us the result of stalemate. Procrastinate, stalemate, which sounds like to me that there's sort of some discussion going between two separate factions, but no one's really getting anywhere. That's just a this and that, and no progress is really being made. Now, that's the scene, and I can then take to my vampire character sheet, roll on that to see if my character can listen out to the details and work out what's going on from a distance, which is really cool, just how the two elements just work so seamlessly together. Now, as I'm choosing those words here, you may have come up with something totally different, and that is absolutely fine, and that's the real fucking joy about doing something like this, that it encourages and pushes your imagination to places where you usually wouldn't expect it to go, like embracing the chaos with a sense of logic. And first edition and a little bit of second edition really pushes towards that meaning and that understanding of ask logical questions to come up with wild, wacky results, and sometimes vice versa. And I think that's a really fucking cool thing. And before we move on, some of you may realise this actually sounds very similar to my own solo rules, particularly the Aurtakis Storyteller, which allows you to play Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition by yourself, but of course it works with other editions of Vampire the Masquerade. And I just want to address this for a moment because I've had a couple people claiming that I plagiarised Tana's work. First of all, Tana is not the first person to do something like this. I actually believe that you actually can find solo rules within the very first edition of D&D, so you could go through the paper trail and say that she is plagiarising D&D's work. And yeah, I do admit that some of the systems and ideas are very similar, and Tana Pigeon knows this, and I do credit Tana Pigeon in my work for it, which is something that people claim I don't do. Tana has seen my work, she shares my work on social media from time to time, and she gives me plenty of praise, and we talk a little bit on her Discord server, so I think you lot might just be a little bit wrong there, honestly. But that aside, you probably saw as I was flicking through some of the pages that the presentation here is a bit inconsistent. Different fonts, the very blocky colours of the time artwork. I will say that if you purchase the PDF now, because this is an older version of the PDF that I have, you do have some of the artwork that's been replaced, and it does look a bit nicer and not as, well, to put it bluntly, crap. It serves its function, perhaps more than one for certain TTRPG players, but it doesn't have the best presentation in the world, honestly, and that's the only colour art piece in the book, and Yeah, it's a choice, but it serves its purpose, which is the main thing, and it very much of a different time, which doesn't really excuse how crass it can be. But when second edition was announced, which honestly wasn't too long after I got first edition here, but it was a good 20 years since the first edition came out, and the glow up it would receive is absolutely astronomical. Like, wowzers, look at the colour, look at the artwork, the lovely hues that pays homage a little bit to the first edition, and look at the fate chart. It's been stripped down quite a lot, so you don't have all these very fine, minute little sure thing, like it breaks things up a little bit, it divides the numbers up a little bit, it actually swaps the numbers around so it actually makes a bit more fucking sense. There are more tables to work with, there's really cool artwork that really does a fantastic job of that really does a fine job of showing the reader that you don't have to be limited with fantasy stuff or horror or anything like that. It can be used with pretty much any TTRPG system, and that's why I love this so much. Again, you see it with first edition, but it's so colourful and bright and inviting when you open up these pages and explore, and it's a lot clearer to read now as well. We have the fate chart here, it gives you the examples about what it could mean, some descriptions about how everything works, and every tool and idea is presented with such a thorough example in here. Lovely colours, it just makes things a lot easier to point out, like lower values, more numbers, like all this sort of stuff. Answering the questions, it gives you a much more easy example to recognize. It shows clearly the numbers that you're looking for, so it doesn't just make one number bigger, it just makes it bold as well. And there are so many different tables. There's a simpler version of the fate chart as well, which I absolutely love, because funny enough, with second edition, with all the different tables and things that are in here that I'm going to be whizzing past you now as I'm talking, I feel that at times there is just too much, because you've got these action tables, you've got these descriptors, locations, and you go on a bit further, all these elements, you've got tables for all these different bits here, like meaning elements, aliens, animals, caverns, characters, like this shit just goes on forever, and sometimes you're just going through all of this, it's like, I don't know what to choose, I'm just overwhelmed with choice. What I end up doing is just choosing the action tables time and time again, because I'm just able to be creative and expressive enough just to take those particular two tables to come up with an answer, which isn't to say that I'm better than anybody else, it's just that was provided in Mythic, that's what I work with, that's what I'm using. So I've been able to condition myself in such a way to use the less is more approach. Going back to the fate chart, there's a much simpler version of the fate chart to use, because I'm not going to deny, as I hinted at earlier on, you've got all these fucking numbers here, all these different likelihood of things happening, and I still have to stop, point at the option physically on my book. Like, if I was going to say something that was very likely, I would literally point at that row and column, roll, and then spend a couple moments trying to work something out. For some reason, I'm on really fucking top form doing this video, I guess. Maybe it's the performance thing, I don't really know. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. But with this much smaller version, not only does it speed up the process, but it's a lot fucking easy to understand. And also, it's more in line with your typical TTRPG mindset, because you're applying modifiers, negative and positive. So if we use our first example again, like, are there any guards around the warehouse? What I would do here, I think it's very likely that it's going to be patrolled by a lot of people. We take the D100 or D10, roll them, add the numbers together. I got 9 plus 6 is 15, plus 2 is 17, which gives us 11 or more, which means yes, there are people patrolling around here. It's very quick, very simple, and again is much more in line with the TTRPG mindset. It's just a fucking great tool. And furthermore, if you're like me, who came with first editions, oh, I don't need to know how all this works because pretty much the rules are exactly the same, it's just got more tools and things to work with now. You could just turn to right at the end of the book to the appendix and you find a rules summary of everything. Breaks it down in bullet points, and furthermore, it's got every single table, journal, thing, idea at the back. So technically speaking, you don't even need to fucking read the book because it's all presented for you there. You've got this wonderful adventures list which you can download from the Word Mills Press site, which is the company that puts this stuff out. So you can put your different threads that I mentioned earlier on, your characters list, and when one of those has to come out through a random or altered event, you can roll on a different dice type. So for example, let's say that I have 30 NPCs that I'm working with here, so 1, 2, 3, and to decide on which of the tables I use, I roll a d6. If that was 40, I roll on a d8, etc. and so forth. And then once I've rolled on that d6, I then roll on a d10, and similar with the different threads about things that would come up. You've got the fate chart, what each of the fiends different means. You've got the adventure journal, which is a much nicer version of the one you found in first edition. You've got all these different tables, the shorter fate ones, what it means, the chaos factor, exceptional results, random event focus table, choosing the random event, all the different tables I just blitzed through just a moment ago. You've got a testing the expected scene, which is a ruling I forgot to mention. When you move from one scene to the next, you decide what's in control or not. So if it were in control, you raise the number, lower it depending on the edition, and then you roll a d10. And it's quite simple here. You roll an odd number within the chaos factor, it's an altered scene. Interrupted scene, expected scene. What happens next? NPC behaviour, NPC statistics, a thread progress tracker, which is inspired by Ironsworn, which is mentioned in the book. So this is a wonderful thing about the TTRPG space. It's such a collaborative thing, like borrowing and developing ideas, and of course these have checkpoints to them about what each different thing means, which Ironsworn doesn't. It's down to you, the player, to work out each one of those means. But with here, it's got different progress trackers that, and at different lengths as well, just to highlight different difficulty things. Like the standard is 10, 15 with a bit more of a tougher one, 20 for another one. Discovery Fates stuff, which sort of adds some more spice there. And what if you want a bit more chaos or less chaos with fate? Well, fuck me sideways, you've got an altered fate chart, which you can use for horror, investigations, more light-hearted things. And a no chaos fate chart if you don't like the chaos factor element at all. You've just got a thing there. There's even a one-page version of Myth you can go and purchase from Drive-Thru RPG as well. Mid-chaos fate, and a simplified version of the ones I saw. There is just so much to this book. All these tables and ideas, whilst being a huge criticism and flaw, I guess, if you're brand new and you're just overwhelmed with the idea of the possibility and what you should and shouldn't be doing here. Like, you can get frozen with all the possibilities, and you could just easily just use the first edition one and just have the one table and call it a day. But the fact that it gives you so much to work with is a really fucking cool thing too. And this is a fucking gorgeous book. Lovely stuff, and I cannot recommend hard enough for you to go and purchase. And I'm really sorry that I've been really fast and rambling and going like a billion miles per hour, but I'm just so fucking passionate for this book. I'm just so passionate for its ideas. I'm so passionate for solo role-playing, and I'm so passionate for using stuff like this in games, as a games master, to encourage and provide some really spicy elements, some of which I've talked about in videos before. It's just so fucking good. Like, grab it. You don't even need the physical version like this. You can just go and purchase the PDF if you wish, which is just as useful, and just print out the pages that you need and have them like a little binder sort of thing, and like use what is or isn't too much for you. Like, get this fucking book now. And not only that, you have like a load of other fucking mythic add-on things in magazines that Tana writes frequently. My buddy Turk of the Grouch Couch has like covers so much of the mythic stuff on his channel. That's going to appear in a playlist up there now for you to go and watch. You can't go wrong with this stuff. Some of it's not necessary for you, some of it is going to be necessary for you. But you just really need to go and grab this book as soon as possible. And I promise you, this ain't sponsored or anything. I just fucking love this. Yeah, it's got some flaws in it, and there's too much themes in here, I think, at some points. But rather too much than too little, I think. So yeah, go and fucking purchase this book. But what if you've got this book already? What do you think about it? Do you like it? What don't you like? What would you improve upon it for your own ideas? Let me know about your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. And if you want that Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition solo tool that I mentioned, I've got that for you down in the description book as well as where you can purchase this on Drive-Thru RPG. I've also got solo rules for Wraith the Oblivion and Where of the Apocalypse and some other goodies down there for you to go and explore as well. Now, if you purchase any of the things that I've mentioned and more via the affiliate code links things in the description below, I get some of the money back because I'm an affiliate on Drive-Thru RPG, and that sort of coin, it allows me to purchase more cool shit like this, to talk more cool shit at you, and other really cool TTRPG horror stuff and all sorts of other things that I'm forgetting at the moment because I'm just in the moment excited and pumped for mythic shit. Now, if you can't do that, that's absolutely fine. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. What if you got all that shit, but you want to support me financially all the same? Go and copy the magical affiliate code and put that in the URL of any Drive-Thru RPG book before you add it to the cart, and that helps me out as well. And it's just amazing stuff, really, because you get books, I get books, and you get content for free, which means it's really in your favour to do this. But as I started to say before I got distracted, If you can't do that because of financial reasons, I absolutely understand that. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it, but if you can, that's great. If you can't, that's also great. But we should definitely do regardless. Give the videos a little thumbs up, and if you love this sort of like energetic rant and more relaxed reviews and other horror-related content, subscribe to the Lore by Night channel and share this video with any and everyone who loves what I do. And I'll see you on the next upload, whatever that may well be for you. And until next time, farewell.